Good afternoon. Oh, that was pretty good. Well, welcome everybody. I'm hoping we have a few more people that will join us. My name is Karen Puterbaugh, and I'm with the Greene County Council on Aging, and we're delighted to have all of you here. I want to first say our public thank you to the church here for allowing us to hold this wonderful program here. I know some of you attend church here, so you're used to the beautiful surroundings, but not everyone probably has been here, and you can probably see why we were so hopeful we could be here. It's just a beautiful, comfortable setting, and I think all of our panelists are comfortable up here. We have a few items on a table up front, just a few, one of which is the council's, we do a printed calendar every year, and we have those out front. If you don't have one and would like one, we would be delighted for you to take one, and if you have a friend or two that you think would enjoy that, please take one for them as well. It has some wonderful stories of some very wonderful Greene County seniors. Appreciate all of you coming. I know the weather turned a little bit today, but it's still a beautiful day to all be together and to celebrate growing older in Greene County, but definitely to celebrate these four wonderful nonagenarians and several others I know that are in the audience. And I won't make you raise your hand, but feel free to brag about that. Reaching 90 is pretty special. More and more individuals are doing this every year, as well as those turning 100. But it is something to celebrate. And I think we all know that there is a portion of society that just assumes that once you reach a certain age or you have a little bit of gray hair or you get those glasses or what have you, they sometimes put us all in a category of, you're just old and what have you. And we're here to celebrate that age is just a number, and we can get older in terms of years, but we still have wonderful lives. We're productive. We are an important part of the community, and our stories are definitely worth telling. One of the things I hope you will do when you leave here is make a point of seeking out more and more wonderful older adults to hear their story. We're not going to be around forever, and we don't want those stories to be lost, so this is just one opportunity to hear some, as well as to encourage ourselves to continue to seeking out those stories. We did an elder panel in 2013. It was probably the most exciting event that the council had ever put on in our world. In any way, we felt it was so worthwhile. And this is our 20th anniversary in terms of some of our accomplishments as the Council on Aging, and we felt this would be the best way to celebrate and acknowledge that by having another elder panel. In your booklets, we talk a little bit about the population, and we have stories about each of these four wonderful folks. And we also sought out some other nonagenarians who were willing to maybe give us a little bit about their life that we could put in a public forum here. So please make sure you read through that. On the back of the booklet, we looked at the 3 years that these four individuals were born. Just gave you a few highlights. I encourage you to look at that later. A couple of us were reading those out loud earlier as we were doing the sound check, and it's kind of like, wow. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to walk away with today is a lot of wow. I personally am 57 years old, very proud of that. One day I will turn 60, and hopefully one day I'll turn 65 and 70 and 75 and 80 and on and on. And hopefully I will be here when I'm a nonagenarian. But I know from my knowledge and my experience that what I have seen in my lifetime doesn't compare. In our presence, we have folks who have seen amazing things, experienced amazing things, not all positive, and we are thrilled to have them share their story. So we're going to start with just some quick introductions. I'm going to ask each of our panelists just to share their name with you and just a little bit about who you are right now. So Ruby, why don't you introduce yourselves to this wonderful audience?
I'm Ruby Kramer, and I was born in Gage, Kentucky, April the 19th, 1926. I'm from a large family. There's 2 boys and 5 girls. And I have lived in Beaver Creek over 69 years. So I feel that Beaver Creek is my home. And I've worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for over 27 years. So I guess that's enough about me.
How about you, Dorothy?
I'm Dorothy Douglas. I was born in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, and I came out here in 1968, and I've been here ever since, and it's been a long, long time. I have 5 brothers and 1 sister. I have families scattered all over the country. What other things?
The work, some of the work that you did.
About my work, okay. I did accounting. That this is what I wanted to do when I went into high school, and I went on and took college courses to do it, and I absolutely love it. I'm a detail person. And I've had excellent work out here. The first time I came here, the first job I had was with Channel 16, and I took over their accounting department, did all their financial statements. And then, of course, eventually, the company went bankrupt and it went into private hands.
But not because of Dorothy. Not because of you, though. Well, why don't we move on to Betty? Can you introduce yourself to the group?
Certainly. I'm Betty Drake, and I was born in April of 1928, and I was one of 3 children. I had a brother and a sister who are now deceased, and I have a wonderful family, and I have 3 children, and William, as I call Billy, and Vicky, and Tammy, which I'm very proud of. And I was born in Greene County, and this is my home church, which I'm proud of. And I worked here at Nazarene Christian School. We had a school for several years here at Nazarene Christian School in daycare, and I worked in the daycare and school office for several years. So.
Thank you. And Paul?
I'm Paul Graham, born June 9th, 1929 in Dayton, Ohio. When I saw the program and saw the panel, I felt very odd and different in many ways, being the youngest person on the panel, being the only male on the panel, being the only person of color on the panel, the only person with a beard. So I feel rather unique, and my immediate reaction was, gee, I have this made. I have 2 sons, live in California, where I spend currently, for the last 20 years or so, about 4 months, almost half of the year in California, primarily winter.
Well, thank you. So as you can see, we have a wonderful panel here, amazing. They're all just appropriately nervous, but again, they can't really see you, so that maybe is helping them out. One of the things that we had asked our panelists to consider is just about those changes that they've seen through their 9 decades, and just thought we could ask you to comment on some of the changes that you've witnessed and experienced over the years, back from when you were a child. Anything related to, say, well, technology is obviously a pretty pronounced one. Food, education, just how people are living, families, just anything that comes to mind when you look back through 9 decades plus in terms of those changes. So, Paul, what might you want to share with us in terms of changes you've experienced?
There have been so many, it's difficult to know where to begin. Certainly, life is full of changes, some of which are good or we think are good, and some of which are bad or we think are bad. But good or bad, change is part of life. In terms of my life, again, born in Dayton, which is not far from here, currently live in Yellow Springs, which is not far from here geographically, but in many ways, people in the county think of Yellow Springs as being far away, another country. In terms of my background, again, I had 3 brothers. My mother and father both grew up in Kentucky, neighboring state. Fairly early in their lives, well, first of all, their background was primarily agriculture, and but fairly early in their lives, as many people in the South, and particularly Black people in the South, at a fairly young age, they moved north. And initially, my parents moved to Indiana, to Indianapolis. And my father, after working on a farm, when he moved north, initially worked in a foundry. That was a fairly lucrative position, although it was, at the time, although it was a lot of hard work. They lived in Indianapolis for several years, and then because industry was growing, and particularly things related to manufacturing, to heavy manufacturing, my family moved north, further north to New York, to Buffalo, New York. They did not reside there very long because my mother said, "Let me out of here as quickly as possible, so cold." And they moved from there to Dayton. I was almost born in New York and Buffalo, but was born in Dayton. And they moved to Dayton latter part of the, 29, and resided there ever since. I lived in Dayton, grew up on the west side of Dayton, and Dayton, like many places in Ohio, particularly southern Ohio, was highly segregated at the time, and we resided primarily on the west side, attended Dunbar High School. After attending high school, I moved on to college, but again, not very far, because I attended Antioch College in Yellow Springs, which is just a few miles from Dayton. And my earlier comment about Yellow Springs being somewhat unique in the county, even though Dayton isn't far from Yellow Springs, at the time I entered college, I knew practically nothing about Yellow Springs. Had never been there. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even sure where it was located. Prior to entering college, I, of course, had applied to several different colleges and universities, and was interviewed, as far as Antioch was concerned, by the publisher, the Dayton Daily News at the time, Walter Locke, and one of the professors of the college, who was a mathematician engineer from India. And my reaction after the interview was, I know I'm not going there, because first of all, the interview was really rather unsettling in that the professor was a very much philosophical, talked a great deal about philosophy and various theoretical positions which he had taken. And of course, the publisher of the Dayton Daily News was one of the very influential person in Dayton at the time. And my, again, immediate reaction was, I know I'm not going there because I doubt if my interview would warrant it, but I was immediately accepted at Antioch at a time that Antioch, which was considered by many a very liberal college, very outstanding in many of its programs, but despite its liberal reputation over the more than 100 years or so, Antioch had not admitted any students of color, and they felt that that was particularly inappropriate for a so-called liberal institution. So I was one of 6 students admitted to the college in the early 40s. And that the 6 of us included some rather unique people. One in particular was Coretta Scott King, who later married Martin Luther King. One of my favorite stories I've heard repeated many times about Coretta was that some of her friends, when she married Martin Luther King, the reaction was, gee, Coretta, you can do better than that.
Betty, why don't you talk a little bit about the experiences you've had over the years? And
Okay. Well, there's been many, many experiences. And one of the things we're talking about food, we did not eat out as a child. We didn't have all the restaurants that we have today. We just ate at home. Wouldn't it be terrible for the kids nowadays without McDonald's? I'll tell you. And I remember as a child, we rented. We didn't own our own homes. A lot of people didn't own their own homes. And just about everybody around you today, we own our homes, so we do. And well, after I got married, then I traveled a lot. We didn't travel, or we hardly went outside of Xenia when I was a child, but I did a lot of traveling with lots of missionary trips and such with my husband. And thinking about communication, it's so much different. We didn't have a telephone for years. Didn't know what a telephone, well, I think our neighbors had a phone, but we did not have a phone. And, but I think about, and we wrote letters. I mean, that's how we communicated mostly. And we just dropped in on people, our families and our friends. We just didn't have a way to communicate, but we just drop in on them. And nowadays, we know we have our computers, which we can find anything. It used to be, I remember going to the library and looking up various things. But today we have our computers and we can just find anything we want to find on them. And our cell phones, we have our cell phones. And of course we have our Facebook, you know, we learn a lot, as you know. So, but anyway, and then of course our TV, it came in much, much later. And we did have a radio, that was one thing. But, so it was completely different than today.
How about you, Dorothy? What are some of the changes you've seen over the years?
Okay. Oh, I'll talk about when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And my brothers were excellent swimmers, and they would take me to the beach, which was only about 1.5 miles away, and I just loved it. And they had a rowboat, and we had wonderful times on the water. And of course, along came the war, and before we knew it, that 3 men were in my family were drafted into the service. And it was, and then of course we went through the Depression. And with our parent, our dad out of work, and it was a very unhappy time, but we survived it. And then I remember one day coming home from school, and my mom always had a soup and sandwich for me. And when I walked into the house, there was a young man sitting at the table and eating whatever my mother gave him. And after he left, I said to my mom, "Who was that man?" And she said he knocked on the door and he asked for something to eat. And she said, "I fed him." And he got up from the table, I remember, and he left. And I told my neighbor, who was a girlfriend of mine, I told her about the young man, and she said, "Do you know that people who didn't have food or hobos, they would put X's and yellow things on the curbs where you live, so to make people aware that they have help here." And I went outside to look at the curb, and there was this H or something or other marks on there. And it was a sad thing. About 2 or 3 weeks later, my mom said to me, we had a glassed-in back porch, and the refrigerator was there. And going into the kitchen, we locked the doors at night, but you could get into the glassed-in patio. And she said to me, "I had 2 chickens in there, and they're gone." And I thought, did that young man come back? I didn't say anything to my mother, but it was kind of a shock that someone would come into our home and do that. And eventually, when I was still in high school, at Camp Kilmer was in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I thought they're always looking for help. And I was 17 years old at the time, I worked on Saturdays and Sundays to help my mother out, because my dad died in 1942. I mean, yes. So it was the troops were now coming back home, and it was swamped. It was just swamped with men needing all sorts of things, the toothpaste, toothbrush, shaving creams, and all kinds of things. And of course, there were things they can buy, gifts for their family, if they had sufficient money. Then after that, when I would finish high school and then went on to the jobs that I enjoyed doing. I also, and one day my sister-in-law, one of my brother's wife, said to me, "We're getting a new car and we're going to give you our car." And I'm thinking, I had the nicest family. They were all so good to each other, and that's when I got my first car. And it helped me when I was going to work at offices further away from home. Let's see what I can tell you more. I had a very excellent, I had a great mother and father. My mother and father were, I wish everybody had parents like them. My mother never raised her voice. She never, nobody ever hit us. My dad was a gentleman, and my brother, and our house was quiet. We had all these children, and our house was quiet. We just came and went. And we helped wherever was needed. And I think of anybody, of children being hit and yelled at, I just cringe that they couldn't have parents as good as I did. And our parents always encouraged us. They never ran our life. We just emulated what they did, what they said, and it all worked out beautifully.
I'm going to move on.
I'm going to say one thing. I can remember the October 29, 1929. I was 3.5 years old, and my father was working for an LN railroad company, and the crash came. And it's the first time I ever seen my dad cry, and the last time. And he lost his job. We had a little ice cream store, which I dearly loved, and so we had to move back to the farm. And he had done quite well in saving money, which I don't think a lot of people realized they could save money back then. And when the bank finally settled with him, he got 3 cents on the dollar. So I think we all should realize things can happen. And so we moved back to the farm, and then we finally were able to buy our own farm at Morgan County. So I went to school in Morgan County, and luckily the little one-room schoolhouse with one teacher and 8 grades was on our farm, so I could walk to school, but other kids had to ride horses or walk or whatever way they could get there if they got to school. So it was not an easy thing for most people to get to school. So when I got out of the 8th grade, we had no bus to go to Morgan County High School. So I decided I'd take a year off, I was going to just not go to high school. So my parents, raising tobacco and cane and corn and all the soybeans and all the other things, they decided they would make me want to go to school. They didn't tell me that, but they actually worked me to death that year. So that was a good lesson, and I couldn't hardly wait till high school started. So when I got in high school, my one aim was to get out of here, off the farm. So I graduated from high school in 3.5 years by promising my principal that I would come back and graduate with the class, or otherwise he wasn't going to let me out. And I remember when World War II started, December the 7th, and it was really a rather upsetting day for all of us because we had more boys in the class than we did girls. So most of the boys either got drafted or volunteered. And so for 3 years, to show you how our school situation was, I did not have a bus to school. So I started out hitchhiking, which I was 4 miles from the high school. And then finally, when the teachers felt sorry for myself, and then they were 3 boys hitchhiking with me. And so they decided, well, they'd be real nice. So he had a pickup truck, and he had 2 of his own kids he was taking to school. So he put a canvas cover on the back end of the pickup truck. And that's the way I got to school. So when I was just about ready to graduate from high school, one of my teachers that I'd had before found out that I could get in Crump's Commercial College in Lexington, Kentucky, if I passed certain scores, which I did. So I went to school there, and they had a contract with the government, which is the way I got to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And if you could complete their courses and pass the civil service test, you had a job. So that's the way that I got a job, and they actually paid my way to come to Wright-Pat. So from there on, I started out as a secretary and was actually doing some of their financial planning. And then I ended up by retiring as a logistics analyst and in foreign military sales. So I worked there for a little over 27 years. I retired when I was 50 and have been retired 43 years. And then I started working for contractors, so I worked for 5 years for contractors. And then I started having fun. But as far as my jobs I had when I was a kid, I thinned corn, set tobacco, and did everything you had to do on a farm because my brother had gone to service. So when I retired, my husband and I got a sailboat. I started square dancing and line dancing and just doing all kinds of things and traveling. We did a lot of traveling. I did travel some with my job. So from that point on, I have raised a granddaughter, and she's now a senior in college. And my husband has passed away, but we really enjoyed our years of retirement. And so I just feel that I've had a full life, and I'm still going, and I still do things that I enjoy. I still take exercise and just kind of run around with all my friends.
Now, Paul, you talked about your Antioch experience, and I know you went on and you also went to, was it in Indiana?
Yes.
So where did you go after? What was your experience then after Antioch? What happened then?
I went to graduate school at Indiana University. At the time, I was interested, well, as the undergrad, I majored in chemistry. And of course, was a chemistry major in graduate school. And after graduate school, while in graduate school, I got married to my late wife, who I had 63 wonderful years of marriage. Rather unusual situation in many respects, in that the one and only blind date I had was with my wife. And it lasted, at the time, I was thinking this affair is really not going anyplace, because she had just finished graduate school and had started work in Detroit, and I was in graduate school at Indiana University. She had started graduate school, had acquired a car. She was a few years older than myself. And so I was thinking, this relationship isn't going anyplace. But I accepted the invitation to attend a dance with her. And again, this turned out to be an affair of 63 years. And let me also indicate that not only was it 63 wonderful years, but my wife's experience in many ways excelled mine, in that she was from high school throughout her life very active in the YWCA, and as a result, she was the president of the national U.S. YWCA for several years, and then went on from there to the international president of the YWCA, and in that position, literally traveled all over the world. And I had the good fortune of joining her on many of these trips, as well as trips of my own in terms of my career, because the company whom I worked had locations in Europe and Japan, and as my later years of employment there, I was not only the chief chemist, but had acquired the position of vice president of the company, and as a result attended travel to many countries, the most unique one being Japan. So the two of us travel a great deal, as part of our employment. And this was after, when we were younger and our children, 2 sons were growing up, we literally traveled all over the U.S., except the South at the time, and for obvious reasons. But the thing is that neither of us had camping experiences, but when we considered the cost of housing for vacationing, and the fact that we wanted to do a lot of traveling, we decided to go camping. Neither of one of us had camping experiences, but we purchased a camper trailer and literally traveled all over the U.S., many different routes to California, the southern route, straight across, the northern route, across the northern Canada. We spent literally 15 or 20 years of camping. At that time, rather unique experiences. One of the more interesting ones was one day we pulled 2 stories. One day we pulled into a campsite in northern Kansas, and they had a beautiful swimming pool. And after setting up camp, we decided the kids wanted to go swimming. We went to the swimming pool. As we approached, the pool emptied. And we were thinking, gee, this is a bad situation. We were thinking that was a matter of, people being not thinking that they did not want, as a result of discrimination, us to swim in the pool. But as it happened, in this small Kansas town, it was not a matter of racial discrimination. It was that the people had never seen people of color. And they were just sort of fascinated and invited us to join them, which was quite an unusual experience.
I was going to then go on to Betty, since we're talking about traveling. You had said that when you were young, you never really got out of Xenia, but then you did do some traveling. What kinds of experiences did you have doing that?
Okay. We had been to Guatemala a couple of times, and my husband had traveled on lots and lots of those trips, and they were just wonderful. And we have been to many, many other places. And usually on summers, during the summer, we would be traveling around, but we didn't as a child. Do you think?
So as a child, did you, if you didn't travel out of Xenia, did you have some things you did as a family that you might consider a vacation moment?
Not a whole lot. We just didn't do a whole lot.
Dorothy? Dorothy, I know you originally were in New Jersey, and then you came here in the 60s. So did you do much traveling?
Did I what?
Did you do much traveling?
Traveling? Yes. I've been all over the country, Canada, Mexico, and some South America. It's, and to Hawaii.
So you've been all over.
I've enjoyed it, and my husband was a captain in the airlines, and he said, why don't you go and take classes and learn just all about aviation. And of course they tell you all about, so I did. And I had to learn all the things that are in front of me and what they're all doing. And sometimes I remember one time he landed on a house, a mountain in West Virginia. And he was working the flaps to get lift because it was a short distance. And as he took off, and I'm watching all the things moving around, and I said, "You forgot to take the flaps off." So it really helped me to understand what was going on, because many times he and I would go on a special trip to pick up something for a corporation and go to Washington, D.C. and then fly back. So and learning, when I learned all about why, what to do if anything's wrong with an aircraft, and where to land, and how, what, all these emergency things. Of course, I never went into learning to fly. I wasn't going to get into a plane and do anything like that. But it did help me, and it made me feel good because I understood everything that was going on.
Well, Ruby, we'll segue from that. One of the things that we all talk about is the importance of keeping our brains fit. We'll talk about the physical piece because we know we've been teasing Ruby that if we needed to take an intermission, we'd have her lead us in some line dancing, but we're not going to do that. But so in terms of keeping your brain active, you can tell we have a wonderful group of folks who really do keep their brains active. But what kinds of things do you do now to keep that? I'm asking Ruby what she's doing to keep her brain going and
moving,
strong.
When you're moving,
We'll let Dorothy take this one first.
Okay. When I moved here.
No, I was asking about brain fitness. What things that the four of you are doing to keep your brains nice and active and sharp and stretched out.
When I'm stressed out, I do yoga. I just go into my yoga thing where I close my eyes and I just sit with my hands on my lap, and all I think of is breathing. And for 5 or 10 minutes, and suddenly my heart rate is back to normal. And I do this all the time. Sometimes when I come in, I've been working out in the yard, and my pulse rate is up, and I just sit down and I go through that routine, and it works.
Well,
and everybody
and
should do the same thing. All they have to do, but when you close your eyes, you tend to begin thinking, and you have to say, no thinking, breathing, just listen to your breath.
And I think we all know that one of the things that's important for our brains is to reduce stress and is to take good care of our physical body. So, Ruby, what kinds of things are you doing then?
Well, I am doing stress training. I'm doing stress training at the Beaver Creek Senior Center. I walk every day.
When you say you're saying strength training, so you're using weights?
Yeah, I'm using weights and balls and bands, and then I walk. I do all my housework, what's done, and then for my brain, I do a lot of reading and do some puzzles. I go to several of the things that Greene County Council on Aging has, like their legal aid and their lunch and learn, and then I just keep moving. I do go out a lot to eat with my friends. I still have a few friends left, and I'm not doing my line dancing anymore. So that I do miss, but I just keep moving. That's all I can say is just keep moving, do whatever you can to move.
What about you, Betty? What kinds of things are you doing to keep your brain active and...
I read a lot. I have read probably 60, 70 books so far this year. Keep the library busy, so I do. But it does keep your mind active, and you're not thinking about things you shouldn't be thinking about. So I kind of get into those novels.
And is that something, do you find that you can't put the book down, or does it help you maybe close your eyes in the evening?
Well, a little bit of both, but it does get to a place where it's hard to put it down. So I do like to read. Yeah.
How about you, Paul? I know you're definitely an active person, but what are you doing for your brain and for your physical body to...
Actually, most of my activity, focus not only on the body but the brain both. And actually, activities that really affect both body and mind. I am very much involved in several exercise programs. I do weightlifting 3 times a week. I do aerobics at least 3 times a week. I'm involved in other special physical activities such as Tai Chi, even boxing. And at one time, I was very heavily involved in yoga. And this was really a result. I started yoga after a very painful accident in which I, while playing tennis, ruptured my Achilles tendon, right Achilles tendon. And this was several years ago, back in the 60s. And at that time, this was a rather serious injury that involved a long period of recovery. As a matter of fact, I had a cast from my hip to my toes for about 6 months and had to be moved around in a wheelchair most of that time. And it was during that period that I started yoga because I was trying to find some activity that I could do, being confined to a chair, and many yoga postures, you're able to do that. In terms of, again, activities, affecting your physical condition as well as your mental condition. In terms of the mental condition, at times it's a matter of the type of focus. The other thing is that in the latter, a few years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson. And with that affliction, one of the major activities that's recommended in terms of helping to cope with it is physical activities. So that afforded me an opportunity not only to vary, but to increase my physical activity. I didn't mention it earlier, but when I retired back in 1994 or so, at that time I was thinking that I would immediately start a program of physical training to the extent of becoming a physical trainer. And I started a course to get certification as a physical trainer. One of the major sort of impetus for that was that I found that many of my relatives and coworkers, on retiring, that was for them sort of the end of their active life. They sort of, took a rocking chair or a good TV set, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that I would become a physical trainer and help them to live a more active life. Mm-hmm. I continued working with people, but I did not become a physical trainer. I was distracted by other types of volunteer organizations and did not get back to that.
Well, and I think they kind of just know where my brain's going, because the next thing I wanted to ask people about is, because all of you are very giving to the people you love, close to home, but definitely in the community. And so, Betty, you mentioned the mission work that you've done, and I know you're very involved here with the church, but can you talk to us a little bit about that sharing of yourself and purpose in terms of caring for others around you, some of the things that you've done? So like when you've been on the mission trips, what kinds of work did that entail?
A lot of it was, they were building churches, new churches, and we just helped out the ladies helped out as far as doing meals and things like that. But it is, you come back an entirely different person. You're in a country you've never been in before, you know, and it's just entirely different in every way. And they have absolutely nothing, you know. They might live in a little shack or a little whatever. And we just take so much for granted by living here in the United States. But when we have experienced being in those countries and helping them, they are so happy with any little thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be much. And they are so happy. And we are just really spoiled here. So we are. So I've learned to really appreciate what we have. And because when we see people have nothing and are very happy within themselves. But these are people that, well, I've been associated around with where they're building churches, so they have come into the church. So that way they are being presented the gospel and so on and so forth. And that is the main thing, really, is showing them Jesus Christ as their Savior. Yes.
And Dorothy, I know that you,
I have a little time hearing you.
yes, I'm going to come next to Dorothy so she can hear me a little bit better. So we're talking about how people are sharing themselves in terms of their purpose and helping others. And I know you've done a lot for many groups over the years. What kinds of experiences have you had and continue to have in terms of giving of yourself?
Oh, my. I belong to many organizations on the East Coast and also over here. And in the church that we have here, 10 years ago, I started a plant sale, and many of the members would bring in things. And of course, I belong to the Bellbrook Garden Club, and they give me all of the excess plants that did not sell. And I take them to the church and I sell them. And all of the money that I receive goes into the church's a fund to give to the food to the people in the community. And then, of course, I worked with a lot of working with what is it? On the East Coast, my cousin was an artist, and she trained people, and she had an art a convention or something, and all the artists brought in all the work, and they sold it, and I guess the part of the money went for the Nurses Scholarship Fund, and we did that a number of years. It was just, and then of course they had programs where people, we danced, we entertained. I was on the stage with a lot of other ladies, and they had people who trained us, and all the monies would go to the Nurses Scholarship Fund. And it's been that way. I gather most of the organizations with the Bellbrook Garden Club, we work with the school children, and we work with we would supply all of the plants that are put out along the street in our town, and in front of the library. Everything in front of the library, we buy the trees, the bushes, whatever needs to be done. And we have been doing that for years, and we work with the school children. We have programs where they make art and signs and things, and they have contests. It's just something that we like to do, and we like to give ourselves to the community. But I'm trying to think of, but of course there are so many things that you can get involved in.
Absolutely.
And when they had the polio and vaccines that came out in the 1930s, the first thing they would call is people who belong to clubs to be there taking names and people are getting inoculated. It's something that we did, and of course we have a scholarship programs. At the Bellbrook Garden Club, we take a student every year who is going to a certain field, and we help them. And on the East Coast, the Ladies Auxiliary I belong to, when we gave a scholarship fund, it was for 4 years for that boy or girl, and it would be $1,000 a year. And so we have fashion shows and all sorts of ways to build up monies to help.
And what about you, Ruby? I know you've definitely given of yourself over the years. What kinds of work have you done for the community?
Well, when I was a kid, I always helped the neighbors. We kind of switched around and did that. And then when I was working at the base, we had certain organizations that we would collect funds for that had been already approved that we could do it. So I was one that was always going through the office and asking everybody for money. And so then when when my children were in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and all the other activities and Little League and all, I was always volunteering in that because I had played softball at the base when I was working. And then as I got older and my children grew up, then I was still working with some other organizations and helping them, and I was always the one that was collecting on the street. Matter of fact, people got where they shut the door when they seen me coming. So sometimes I just felt like I wasn't wanted. But then when I got a little more mature, like in my 70s, I started volunteering. Actually, I volunteered at the senior center for over 10 years teaching line dancing. I started that over there, so I will take credit for that. It's still going on and doing great. And actually, I still do a little collecting on the street, but not so much since I moved in a different neighborhood. And so for me to do that, and I'm always trying to help my neighbors. I have neighbors, some of them don't have cars, and I'm taking them different places. And so I just keep busy trying to help people. And I did get a granddaughter when I was 70 years old to raise, and I have raised her, and I'm going to advertise with the help of the Greene County Council on Aging, Kinship Care. They really did a lot of good things of telling me where to go. So anyhow, I've just, done things like that. And I still volunteer if somebody really needs me. And so basically, I'm here if you need me.
And what about you, Paul? I know you definitely have shared of yourself, outside of, work and family, but for the community and in a number of ways. What might you want to tell this audience about?
I mentioned my interest in physical training, but I was very much, the reason I was sort of moved in another direction in terms of being involved with organizations was that I became very much involved with the Glen Helen Association in Yellow Springs, which was part of Antioch College. It's a physical environment, a forest, many of you probably are aware of it, of about more than 1,000 acres, and which is owned by the college. But I was involved in the governance activity. A good part of the effort of the organization, most of it initially was based on voluntary work. And after becoming involved, I ended up president of two of the governing organizations for the Institute. But in addition to that, I was very much involved with the early start of a credit union in Yellow Springs, which is now a very vital. I was involved with the start of a nursery school in Yellow Springs, involved in the early days with the theater program. Some of you may recall that a number of years ago, Antioch College presented all of Shakespeare's plays over a period of several years. And even though I have very little acting experience, I was very much involved in the governance and some of the supporting activity, such as box office and general work, but mainly box office related activities as far as the theater is concerned. I was very active in the senior citizens in Yellow Springs, initially volunteering in various capacity, but ended up really as one of the major fundraiser for several years. I served on the school board in Yellow Springs for a period of about 8 years, was president of the school board for most of that time. In the 50s, I became very active in the civil rights movement. One of the major efforts in Yellow Springs, as far as civil rights was concerned, focused on the barber shop, and I was one of the major participants and the litigant, and ended up with a court case that went to the state Supreme Court in terms of discrimination in places of public accommodation. I was just trying to recall all of the various organizations I've been involved in some way or other over the years. No, that's probably.
There are many. And if you haven't picked up on this, obviously we didn't just find these lovely folks on the street and say, hey, come on, we have something for you to do. I mean, we talked to them about what we wanted them to share. I would say all four of them said yes, more because they were asked and felt like, well, if I'm asked to do something, I should do it. It definitely wasn't because, hey, it's a time for me to sit up on a stage and talk about myself. And they're all doing a wonderful job, but you can also still hear how humble and humble they are in terms of all that they have done over their years. So we definitely appreciate you putting yourself out there. I'm gonna go in a little bit different direction, but it's still a positive one. Most of us learn. We learn in all sorts of ways, but one of the strongest ways we learn is because of something that didn't go well. Some kind of hardship, some kind of challenge, a tough situation. So I wanted to ask all of you to maybe share how you, not necessarily share that hardship, but that's your choice, but how did you manage, what kinds of things did you do in order to move on, move forward, grow, learn after a difficult situation or experience? Ruby, start with you.
Okay, one of the most hardship that I would think of is when we lost a son. My husband and I lost a son, and he drowned in Florida. And so he was only 20 years old. And so it was just kind of hard to cope with. We were there for a regatta, a national regatta. And so we thought about it and prayed and everything. And so finally we decided to take his life insurance that we had on him, and we gave it to a scout troop to be sure that all of the scouts had water safety. And so that worked out good. And, well, they could use it for some other things, but that was basically the thing. And then I guess another hardship I had was when my husband got Alzheimer's. So you keep trying to figure out what to do and everything like that. And so I will have to say I went for aid. Where'd I go? Greene County Council on Aging. And they had a wonderful group that they met and had a navigator. And so they encouraged us and told us how to cope with stuff. And so that was a great learning experience for me, because I did have to learn to keep my mouth shut sometimes. And so, but those were, I think, two of the hardest things that I have got.
Make sure Dorothy, so Dorothy, what I was asking is, in terms of when we all have challenges and hardships through our life, kind of what you learned from those experiences and how you were able to move on. Are there any pearls of wisdom that you can bestow on us to help us? Because we all have tough things going on now or coming our way. That's part of life, but anything that you can maybe share with the group.
Actually, I don't remember ever having any hardship. You have parents and you lose them. It's just a very sad time, but it's not a hardship. They have with my upbringing. I know that we all have to stay together as a family and take care of each other. And things went along beautifully when I lost my father, and my mother was alone, and her sons were in the service. And this is one of the reasons why, while I was still in high school, I worked on Saturday and Sunday to help her financially, and some of the boys were sending money home, and Social Security was in, but Social Security was only in for a couple of years, and you got literally nothing. It was pretty sad. My mother got $25 a month for her, and she got $13 for the three of us that were still in school. But she had the ability in her to carry on, and we helped whatever we could, and eventually it was about 2 years later, all the boys were coming home. You lose a lot of loved ones, no matter all your life, and but you have good memories. And of course, I'm glad that my family that I have lost all of them. I only have a sister left. But they were all wonderful gentlemen. My sister is doing very well. She's 2 years younger than I am. And all the boys are gone. But I have, like I said, I have wonderful memories of them. They had good lives. They were very productive. They had homes. They raised children, and this was the wonderful part about what they did, and the excellent work they did in industry, and they never wanted for anything. Everything that they did. They're the ones that brought the money home. And I am okay. I'm very thrifty. When I realize that you have to prepare for your future. You may be getting Social Security, but you still have to prepare, which I did. And I'm thankful that I can take care of myself. And God has been great to me, and He has kept me here, and I'm glad I'm here. And I'm glad that of all the people like in the community and in the organization that are doing so much for the seniors in Greene County. And we're very, very lucky to have them.
Betty, what would you like to share with us?
Okay. When I was 14 years old, I met the love of my life, a 16-year-old, good-looking fella. And we got married when I was 18 years old. And we were married for 71 years. And many years later, he developed Alzheimer's. And we had it was about 10 years. And it was just a slow process, you know. So it was. But he was such a wonderful person, wonderful to me, and always a positive person. And as time went on, I didn't realize how it was affecting me. I wanted to take care of him and take good care of him. And my kids realized that I was having a problem, but I didn't realize it, you know. So one night, during the middle of the night, I happened to be asleep, and I see a flashlight shining up my stairway and saying, "Xenia, please." And lo and behold, I could be awake at night with Bill, but then he had got out during the night, and he had fallen, and I did not know it. But you know, and they'd already taken him to the hospital. Police had come, and the paper boy had found him because it's delivering the paper, and he found him outdoors in just his underwear. And when they got him to the emergency room, they told me that if he'd been out another hour, he would have been gone. And I would have really never, ever, ever forgiven myself if that would have happened. But God took care of it. And he was in hospital for several days, and so we put him into a care center, and he was there for 4 months before he passed away. But it was good times. He had a good time there, and but he was the love of life, and we were married for 71 years.
Paul, what would you like to share with us in terms of managing and learning and growing through challenges?
The two major challenges of my life was first of all, the latter few months of my wife's life, who was a very, very active person, extremely active. As I mentioned, she really traveled all over the world. And the latter few months of her life was spent in bed under hospice care, and having to provide what care I could provide with a person that, particularly who had been so active, was quite a hardship for me. And the other major one was my diagnosis about 6 years ago of Parkinson, which is a very, very unique disease with many, many, many symptoms, which vary with individuals. No person, one person with Parkinson, would necessarily have all of the symptoms another person would have. And learning to deal with that, and it's sort of accepting the difficulty, the affliction, without letting it necessarily stop my interest in people and living and being active. Coping with those two situations were probably the, more difficult situations I faced in my life.
And I'm going to assume, and we go on to this next topic, this is how all of you have dealt with some of those challenges. Many of us, we're not talking about going to the comedy club or anything like that, but incorporating some level of humor. A couple of you have showed that this, up here on the stage already. But humor and spirituality and attitude. Those are all three very important components in our lives, and I would love, and I know the audience would love for you also address that in terms of helping us do a better job of taking advantage of those three wonderful characteristics as we, again, live through whatever life decides to throw at us. So I'm going to go back down to Ruby. So again, we're looking at humor, spirituality, your attitude.
Well, I'm a rather light-hearted person, I guess. I try to keep busy is one of the things. I love people, and so with when I feel, like I need down and out, I love to talk to my friends and get with them. And they always cheer me up. And I do like to keep busy. And so I guess that's my main thing, is keeping busy, pray, and just visit with people.
Okay, Dorothy. So we want to hear from you about how you incorporate and what you can teach us about incorporating some humor and spirituality and a positive attitude in our daily lives that help us to continue on.
Our attitude in life, or what?
Yep, and I would say attitude for sure with you. You've got a pretty positive, very proactive attitude. What can you talk to us about?
Okay. I think as you go on in life, you have to accept people as they are, and make friends as many as you can. And I'm not afraid to, when I'm at an auction, and this lady was standing next to me, and I said to her, "Oh, what is that? What's that worthwhile? What price should I go for that?" And then I didn't do it. And I said, I'm again talking to her. I said, I have a chair, and it needs to be caned. And I said, I don't know how to cane. And when her husband came over to her, she said, this lady has a chair, and it needs caning. So he said to me, you bring the chair to my house, and I will teach you. So that's how I learned caning. And you'd be surprised, I caned a lot of chairs. And a rocking chair. And the same thing happened is my brother, when he had a sedentary job, and he was kind of bored with it. And he said he needed to do something on the outside. And he noticed where they have, in the summertime and spring, they have these small little stools in a park or something, and where people bring things and they sell things, and it varies. So he decided that's what he's going to do. He's going to collect things. And one day he said to me, you need a bicycle? I said, well, I don't have one. I said, okay. Next thing you know, I have a bicycle. He said it was out for garbage. And this is what he did. He got furniture, and before you know it, people were calling him and giving him things. They were downsizing or whatever, and he gave me a lovely gate leg table. And I said it had a cigarette burn on it, and I'm thinking, well, that needs to be fixed. And I'm thinking, how? I don't know how to do that. So I remembered Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I called and I said, do you have a booklet that will tell me how to strip furniture? And they did. And I sent the check to them and they sent me the booklet. And it told me exactly what to do, anything, and the chemicals, everything from beginning to end. So that's what I did, I stripped it. Then after a while, I'm thinking, I would buy an antique of something, and I'm thinking, I don't like all that dark paint on. Underneath there must have beautiful wood. So I laid it out on the floor in the garage, and I stripped it. Of course, the wood was beautiful. And of course, you have to protect yourself with gloves, with a mask, everything. The book was very, very informative. And so this is what I did. It seems that I like to work with my hands. I like doing these things. It's not, and so other people will go into something else, but I really enjoy this. And of course, I either have things on the deck, and then of course, I bought a cabinet, and one of the doors beveled out, and I'm thinking, how do I fix that? I went back to my book again. And it said, soak it in water. The door, that part, soak it in water. And then I put it out on the deck, and I had something very flat surface. I put that there, and on top of that bevel, I put bricks until it went all down to normal. And I'm thinking, it's so simple. It's just knowing what to do. And this is what I did. I can't tell you how many things I stripped.
Well, and I think if you haven't picked up, one of Dorothy's mantras and her attitude is she hasn't found a project she couldn't do, let alone try. Of course, with Ruby, I would say part of her attitude is she hasn't met a person she didn't like or wouldn't talk to. What about Betty? What about Betty in terms of humor and your spirituality and just your attitude about life, and what can you share with us?
Okay, I try to be a positive person, and we like to be around positive people. And if you're negative, around somebody negative, it doesn't make you feel very good at all. So I like to be positive and be around positive people. I learned a lot of my humor from my husband, and I also learned that laughter is very good medicine. So, and my church is my whole life. My family and my church and my friends are my whole life. They mean so much to me. And I like to greet people with a smile, and usually you'll get a smile back. But if you do not get a smile back, it might mean that person might think about it later on and think, oh, she smiled at me. Maybe they'll change your life. So.
Why don't you tell the audience who don't attend this church what your main job is here now on Sundays? What's your job on Sundays here at the church?
You talking to
Yeah, to you?
me?
Yeah.
Oh.
This will be a big shocker to you.
I've been a greeter for years and years and years and at the church, and I've kind of thought maybe I would just kind of step out of that a little bit, but I'm still out in the foyer, and I'm still getting see my friends and my wonderful people and my family, and I love all those hugs.
Yeah, smile that's a mile long, wide smile. How about you, Paul? When you think about humor and spirituality and your attitude, what can you tell us? What can you inspire us with?
I don't watch a lot of TV, but to the extent that I do watch TV, humor is, my favorite activity. I like, watching humorous programs, comedians, etc. One of my greatest regret is not being able to play a musical instrument because I love music and also dance. My dance, as a matter of fact, I had quite a reputation as a dancer, starting back with the days when I used to be one of the few people who could do the Charleston to line dancing. So dance in general has been one of my favorite activities and something I really love. And in terms of dealing with my Parkinson, I find that there are a number of dance programs, most of which are based on a program that Mark Morris, who's was a ballet dancer, started. So I'm currently even involved in a dance program that's designed for people with Parkinson. We don't do the Charleston, but we do other things. And again, love music, all types of music, from even country western to opera. One of my greatest experiences was attending the opera at the Opera House in Sydney, Australia, a beautiful location for viewing an opera. So humor, music, opera, dance, they've all been a very, very vital part of my life.
Okay, so I have two questions that we're going to end with. If we were to bring up to the stage or meet them at a coffee house or what have you, some people that are close to you, maybe it's your granddaughter Ariel, maybe it's your good buddy Carol or somebody else, what would they say about you? Remember, we're in a church environment, and we've got to, we're being taped.
I may not want to know. Well, I think that they would say I probably, on the good side, I have always tried to be fair and a good friend and do my share. But on the other side, they may say that I was picky or that maybe I didn't do all the things they thought I should do. I'm not sure what they would say about me. I never thought of that.
Well, we will be following up with everybody, so we'll let you know.
Are you going to send a questionnaire out?
I am. Absolutely. Okay, Dorothy. So the question is, if we would bring up to the stage or meet some of your good friends, whether they're still here with us or not, and we would ask them to tell us about you, what would they say about Dorothy Douglas?
My good friends?
Okay, good friends, yeah.
Actually, my good friends I've had for years and years and years. And from the time I was in high school, when one school went to the 5th grade, and after that we went to the 6th. And when I in the 6th grade, there were three young girls that they embraced me and took me into their circle. And that went on for years. They got married, they had children. And then you start meeting other people. And I went to a flower show at somebody's home. They were getting rid of a lot of things because they're going to move. And I began talking to the lady, and she was very nice. We got along beautifully. And next thing she told me, she's moving to Bellbrook. And we have been the fastest friends for now 10 years. And she takes care of my dog if I can't be home and are away too long. And this is what happened with the friends that I had in school. They all moved to different areas away from Perth Amboy. And we always kept in touch with cards and letters. And my best friend that I met when I joined the Bellbrook Ladies Guild. And Jean and I became close friends. And it lasted forever. And she moved to Florida. I would visit her in Florida. We keep in touch by telephone. And then she hadn't called me for several months, and I said, she said, oh, okay, she said, I'll call you back, in a couple of months, and I never heard from her. And so I called, and her phone was disconnected. And I felt so bad. I know she had his daughter living there, and I knew something bad happened.
But what would these lovely friends tell me, Karen, about Dorothy? If I would ask them to tell me about you, what would they say about you?
Oh, what would they say back to me? Oh, they liked me. we had friendships that were so close. We would go on to vacations. We'd get we rent a cottage at the shore, and the four of us, and it just that. And I was their bridesmaid or something else, with them. It just never stopped.
So rave reviews is what I'm hearing. They'd say nothing but wonderful things about you, right?
If
better?
they accepted me, and I'm sure they would. They wouldn't say anything bad. Mm-hmm. Neither would I, because we were so much alike. We always liked the same things. We liked doing the same things. There never was say we would have an argument about anything. We never did. I was very lucky. I was really very, very lucky.
They were too. What about you, Betty? Because I know some of your friends are here in the audience, so I could track them down.
Should I call them up? But
So we'll see if you get it right. Oh, go ahead.
I just hope it would be good, and if it's not good, or if I don't mean really not good, but if there be something, maybe a constructive a criticism, maybe I might need to know that I'm not, that maybe I'm doing something, you know what I mean, or saying something that I don't really realize that it's not as positive as it should be. Now, I would consider it a good friend to tell me that. And, but I think my friends like me, I hope, and my daughters and my son. So, but I just, you don't want to say too many positive things about yourself. You don't really know how people really feel, maybe. But I hope it's good, because I love them. And I can honestly say I like everybody. And maybe we love, some people more than others, but I really, really care for people.
And it shows. How about you, Paul? If we would ask the question about Paul, what would be told to us?
Even many of my relatives say, 90? You can't be 90. I don't believe it. And one of the expressions I hear frequently, particularly in terms of many of my companions in the exercise programs, is that, you're really an inspiration. And one favorite expression I hear is that I want to be like you when I grow up.
That's
Sweet.
pretty cool. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit tougher, and this is going to be our last formal question to our panelists. And like I said, if any of you would like to ask a question, we're going to ask you if you're able to come up this way, and we'll take a few questions from the audience. But so this is your opportunity. I know, again, Betty just alluded to that it's hard to say a lot of nice things about yourself, but we're going to say it for you anyway. But what we'd like you to share with us is one thing that you would like all of us to know about you, that we maybe you would encourage us to share. I met Ruby the other day, and she is, or she did, or she had this experience. What's the one thing that you would like us all to leave here knowing about you?
Would you repeat the question?
Yes, so, yes, I will. So what's that one thing that you can share with us that you would like us to know, that you haven't already told us, possibly, or that we could then pass on to somebody else when we're telling people about this wonderful afternoon, listening to all of you? What's that one thing that we could pass on and about Ruby?
Well, you could pass on to everybody. I have enjoyed being here. I think the audience are wonderful, and the panel too. And but I think what I would like to pass on, that I really am a very quiet person in some ways, and I'm trying to be helpful to all my friends. And I just hope that my reasoning for being able to live till I'm as old as I am is because I have tried to be a good person and tried to be helpful. And also I tried to enjoy life and enjoy people.
Thank you. Okay, Dorothy. So, I don't know if you caught the question or not, but I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it for everybody. What is that one thing that you would like us to leave here knowing about you, being able to share with others about you when we start telling people about this experience that we've all had listening to the four of you? What's the one thing that we can say about Dorothy and her life?
I think everyone goes through a lot all through their lives. There's good times, there's sad times, but you have to look forward, and if things changed, you have to just build up the courage to just go on and take care of yourself, take care of your family. And there is also friends. Have friends. Go to your churches if you belong to one. There's a lot of areas where you can enjoy, and there's different things you can do. There's a theater. There's the Schubert Schuster Center. There's lovely things that you can go to do and see. It's just you just do things that you enjoy, and that's it. If you're retired, and this is the time for you to do the things that you like.
Thank you. How about you, Betty?
I would just like to show the love of Jesus in my heart for everybody.
Thank you. And Paul?
One of my favorite expressions is that of gratitude. I'm really grateful for the life I've lived.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, the one, gratitude is my favorite word, that I'm just grateful for the life I've lived, the friends, the relatives, for everything.
And we are grateful for all of you. Well, before just a couple closing remarks, is there anybody that would like to ask a question of one of our, and no pressure, but if there's a burning question people have, we'd love to hear it. Yes, sir.
I won't know if it'll come up, but I'll speed it up. I would like to say thank you very much for being here and sharing your lives with us, because you're our teacher, our mentors. I was in the military life. I've been here for 10 years. This is the longest I've been anywhere, and it's really neat to be able to share this with everybody and to be able to look back on other people's lives. And I would ask a question as to what part of your life was the pinnacle? Is it now during your senior years or mid-senior years in college, or your early years, maybe back when you were 60 or you're back? What was the favorite part of your life? Because you can look back and tell us in advance. We might be able to look through your eyes and know something better.
And just to recap the question, and thank you very much, sir, for that. He's asking, other than this moment here today, what would be the pinnacle, that high point in your life when you look back? What's that one just amazing, special thing? And of course, all of you have commented on several things, but does anything come to mind to you, Ruby?
Well, I'm going to say probably when I met my husband. So that was actually a highlight. Not that I knew it particularly at that time, but that and actually having my family.
Dorothy, did you get the question? The question is, what would be, other than this moment here right now, what would be the pinnacle in your life? That one moment, that one experience that, looking back.
Pinnacle. I think when my brothers all came home from the army, they were all in Europe, and one was in the Far East. There was so much concern at home, and my mother was by herself because my father passed away, and of course all the boys were gone. That was the highlight, that they all came home, and when we heard that and they were all safe, it was just I think it was the best thing that ever happened in our life, that we didn't lose any of them.
That's wonderful. How about you, Betty?
Okay. Well, I believe, too, when I first met my husband, it was wonderful. And when I had my babies, as you mothers know, and your fathers, too, you first look at that little babies, each one of them, there's such love in your heart. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. How about you, Paul?
Likewise, family. I think that the years that we spent camping, again, a matter of 7 or 8 years, we spend almost the entire summer camping, and the family, being together during those periods and doing everything together, cooking, playing, sleeping, just very memorable.
Thank you. Any other questions?
What's the biggest change that's seen in Greene County representing the city?
So the question is, what's the biggest change you've seen in Greene County, looking at the cities that you happen to live in?
Well, when I moved to Beaver Creek, it was farmland, and now it's almost concrete. And so I have seen all the changes that was made. Some of the streets was nothing but cow paths, and some of it's been very good, and some of it, though, maybe has grown a little too fast and too much concrete, since I'm a farm girl.
Thank you. So Dorothy, the question is, so as a Bellbrookian, what's been the greatest change, difference that you've seen over the years in your town of Bellbrook since you've been there?
Well, one thing about our community is we're not finished building houses in our city, and I love the idea we have everybody has space around them. That's why I moved there, and the with the government, they take care of the trees. The garden club is taking care of a lot of planting in the city. But the city works with us. When we ask them to do favors for us so we can do more for the city, they're always there. And the school is too. They're very appreciative to what we do, and it builds the city up. And this is part of, and when you have city officials that say, no income tax for you people, we are not going to take any money from your paycheck. And they don't because we will vote against it. We're very much alert to what is going on, and the city can work with the taxes that they have, and they're not going to take anything from our paychecks. So it's, and they understand that, and they go along. They have never approached it again. Other than that, you can go to any part of the city. This is what I did when my garage door couldn't open, and I couldn't understand why. And I looked up and I saw the springs were broke. So who do I call? The street department. That's what I love about Bellbrook. And I told them my problem, and they had 2 cars come with about 4 men, and they picked up the door so I can get my car out. And then, of course, I had to call someone else to fix the door.
Oh, I was going to say.
But this is the nice thing about Bellbrook. Anytime you call and ask them if you need help, they will come to your house and help you.
And Dorothy gets things
And
done.
I don't know if you get that in any other community, but this is what they do. It's just, it makes you feel good that you can call somebody and they'll come and help you.
That's great. How about you, Betty?
Oh, downtown Xenia certainly has changed. We used to go downtown on Saturday nights. Now, guess what? We go to the mall. That's changed.
Fine change. And what about Yellow Springs?
You were asking about Yellow Springs, but I'm going to talk about the area.
Okay, yeah. However you want to answer is fine.
Greatest change that I've witnessed, I must say, is not positive, it's negative. The Dayton area at one time was sort of the epitome of many things: innovation, industry, you name it. Dayton was it. And that's no longer the case. And I think that's regrettable because some of it could have been avoided. But again, in terms of particularly technology, industry, Dayton was it. And that by Dayton, I'm including the whole area because, no one place is sort of an island. And that's no longer the case, unfortunately.
Well, just a couple closing remarks. First, thank you to all of you out there for joining us. Again, we have some refreshments in the lobby and a chance to say hello to our panelists. A huge thank you to all of you. I think many of us in this room had a number of what I call goosebump moments in terms of things that you have shared, just in addition to you being willing to be with us today. It's been a special afternoon. We appreciate all of you. We appreciate all the other nonagenarians out there. Again, I know there's several of you. And with that, I think we should give them a wonderful round of applause. And safe travels to everybody. Thank you very much.